One.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the BODcast with Alli and Chris. I'm Alli.
I'm Chris.
And this is our special guest today, Megan Bliss. She is a nurse practitioner, which is just below a doctor, right? Like you can prescribe tests and medications and things like that, right? So good for you for not having gone all the way.
Wasn't worth it.
And she specializes, is building a practice just launched in helping women balance their hormones. And I got a ton of fun stuff to discuss with you today. So first of all, you mentioned something in our live that we just did that I thought was really interesting. And you were talking about how estrogen impacts leaky gut.
Yes.
Can you go into that in a little bit more detail? Because the live wasn't really the place for it. It was just to kind of say hi, but this is a good place to dive into some of the mechanics of those things.
Yeah, so there are estrogen, progesterone receptors all over the body. I think one of the misconceptions about hormones is like, especially female hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, that they really only impact the uterus. And that's the only thing that matters is the uterus and a period. And that is such a false thing to believe. There are so many receptor sites, so many functions. There are over, I think, like 300. I should have looked up the stats, but there's over like 300 functions of estrogen alone in the body. And yes, estrogen affects the tight junctions in the gut. So where the tight junctions are, and I'm holding my fingers up and putting them smaller and bigger, where they are, it does affect that. It affects how tight those junctions are. And when your gut is inflamed, it affects our estrogen levels, and our estrogen levels affect how leaky the gut is too.
The inflammation of the gut, right back again. Right. And men have estrogen.
Yes.
Just not as much as we do. And we have testosterone, just not as much as they do. But yes. I think a lot of men go way overboard. I see a lot of men go way overboard in the not eating vegetables part of it. And they don't realize that fiber is necessary for estradiol uptake. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because this is going to be a whole new, they're going estradiol what, Alli? What is happening here? Can you?
Yeah, so there are several forms of estrogen. Right now, we know about 3 forms of estrogen. There is estradiol, estrone, and estriol. And estrone tends to be the one that is not great, cancer promoting, stuff like that. But estrogen, we'll just put an umbrella and call all of them estrogen. Estrogen gets metabolized in the liver and gut, and that fiber is 100% necessary for the metabolization of estrogen in both men and women. And yes, men tend to do a lot of dietary changes that don't have focus on fiber. A lot of times they do high fat, high protein and lose a lot of focus on the fiber intake. And then if they're not having adequate fiber, when they are increasing these fats and these proteins, they can retain, both men and women can retain estrogen.
Yep. I see these people. I see these guys, right? They have the gut and they have the fat up here.
Yes.
Even if they're bodybuilding and they have a little too much up in that area that they really, really don't want to have. It sounds like they just need some more vegetables. But there's a carnivore and the keto people all over Twitter promoting carnivore and keto. And I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I don't want to say anything bad about it.
I know, I don't either. I don't want to be that person that's like,
but I'm like, you need this.
Yeah,
you need the vegetables, you know.
I know, and it sounds really, really interesting and alluring, and I love meat. It tastes really good. It's good for us, you know. I love it, but we are missing that big component when we focus solely on one or two food groups.
I completely agree. So I've seen some doctors on Twitter that have been very obese, have gone keto, and now they're making that a primary part of their practice to help people go on keto and be able to stay on keto. And okay, God bless them. But then I put up a picture, or I didn't even put up a picture, I put up a post because I had just eaten dinner, nice lean fish, lots of veggies. I think it was cauli rice and some pinto beans and a whole bunch of tilapia with some salsa, because that's like my new favorite thing. And I tend to eat the same thing all the time when I love it. And then I ate a peach for dessert, and I was so full, right? I was full. I already had my dinner, but I ate this peach. And I said, oh my gosh, I think some people should eat more fruit and they'd feel more full to help them lose weight. And this doctor climbs in and he goes, if I ate a peach, I would completely lose all my satiety. And I thought, I think there's a problem with your stuff, with your receptors, with your feedback loop here.
And a big problem with that is they're missing out on so many antioxidants that come from fruits, and so many good phytonutrients, so many good things that come from these fruits and vegetables that our receptor sites need to function optimally. Yeah.
See, and the micronutrients that our brain needs to help, regulate our mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a methylation issue and you've got too much folate, like you're not processing folate well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but not folic acid. And this can affect autism. It can affect.
It helps mitigate like inflammation and stuff too, right?
100%. Yes.
These are our friends, the fruit. But then there's people that vilify fruit because of fructose. And I'm thinking, okay, you ate it when you were a child, your parents gave it to you, and you didn't seem to suddenly blow up into a giant balloon. Where along the way did we suddenly start vilifying everything that wasn't a meat? But then there's the other side of the table that vilifies meat and only eats fruits and vegetables, and they're missing out on a lot of protein, in my opinion.
It's the extremism.
Yeah.
It's the extremism, and it's really sad, but I'm like you, I'm not gonna like jump down their throats or anything.
Well, but then they go get sick and get cancer and all of these things. It's like, well,
and they don't have the antioxidants to fight it off because they.
And
so we'll do our part to educate, right?
Any vegetables to help get rid of the estrogen that needed to not be there. It was cancer causing.
And then by the time you are sick and you can't process the vegetables because your gut's all messed up, so none of this stuff's going to help you at that point anyway. It's way too little, too late. You'd have to start by fixing your gut, but by then the cancer's done this thing. Like,
yeah.
Ooh. We weren't going to get passionate on this, but apparently we're passionate about this stuff.
A little bit.
Polarizing stuff. I don't mind getting polarizing about diet though, because I think any type of extreme diet leads you down the path mentally of unsustainability, and not because your body can't adapt, but because you live in a world where there are all of these things. And when you've eliminated most of what you're able to eat, because otherwise you're afraid that you're going to lose all of your gains and you're suddenly going to go back to becoming that obese person that you were, that fear is so intense and so real that they will completely shut off entire parts of their existence so that they don't go back there. And what I would love for them to know is it's not their fault. It's their gut's fault. It's the hormones. Those things need to be fixed and handled. And they don't have to worry about not eating fruits and vegetables or a cupcake occasionally.
Yeah. Yep. And if you heal your body and you heal your gut and you heal your hormones, there will come a time in your life when a cupcake here and there is not going to balloon you, and you can enjoy it every now and again and then move on. And guess what? You don't crave them nearly as often as you did, so you should not be focusing on elimination of all the things. And I love to encourage people that I work with, if you can just start increasing those phytonutrients before focusing on decreasing carbs, then that will get you way further. Yeah, eliminating processed foods, 100%, you know,
I think that's 100%. Everybody can agree that that's a good idea.
That's a good idea. Hopefully we're all on board with that. But when it comes to like carbohydrates are bad, that's like, not all carbs are created equal. They're not.
Potatoes are great.
Yeah.
They do not react the same way inside the body as a hamburger bun.
Exactly.
100%. Yeah. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, or at least I tweeted on Twitter. I don't really tell my clients this because we don't need to get into it, but you can have, you know, low fat, high carb, no problem. You can have high fat, low carb, no problem, but you can't have high fat, high carb because that's what got you here.
No, there's your standard American diet in a lot of ways too.
Exactly. Highly palatable, high sugar, high carb, you know, that's
sugar, salt, fat.
Yeah.
That combo is very potent.
I wanted to go back and talk a little bit more about the cortisol and the stress and everything. So not just like environmental stress, the pressure that we put on ourselves, the alarm clock, the treadmill, but like how we view it, how much pressure we put on ourselves, but then how much we stress our bodies. And I wanted to also touch on the idea of what people call adrenal fatigue, right? And hypoadrenal, they go, my adrenals are just not functioning anymore. And I'm like, is that really what it is? Or have they just functioned so much for so long that now you're getting an irregular type of response along with the gut uptake and the cortisol receptors inside your gut. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. Where do you want to start with that? With all the things that I just threw out at you, pick one up and carry it.
It can. The adrenal glands can get to a point where they are. I think the term adrenal fatigue has been vilified, you know, and it's like that is not true by some doctors or like glorified by others. The adrenal glands can get burned out. They can get burned out. And what is causing that can be a myriad of things. It can be many things. It can be illness. It can be the stress we put on ourselves. It can be so many different things. And
out to the point where they no longer produce any adrenaline, or it's just in a weakened state?
Some in extreme cases, I've seen it to where it's like not even producing. However, we've been able to reignite things and get things back going. But usually in that case, people are living off of caffeine. They are searching for their next caffeine fix. They are overdoing it, and we have to really taper back and implement therapy and cut caffeine, cut alcohol, all of that type of stuff. But it can't, and a lot of times there is a suppression of the other hormones going along in there too. And so if we can provide other hormonal support too in the meantime, then the adrenal glands are like, okay, I'm not as taxed. I can do some healing and I can get back to where I need to be.
Gotcha. Sounds like amphetamines and like, you know, things like Adderall and Ritalin can readily affect that too.
Totally.
You know, people that don't even have a diagnosable, you know, ADHD type of thing that just take Adderall because they feel like it gives them an edge, a mental edge over other people. And I'm thinking that
there's a lot of college kids in that category.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think a lot. I wonder what their cortisol results, what their cortisol curve would look like.
Probably pretty abysmal, I would say, because they're doing it almost every day. Especially through college when you're trying to like really crunch it in. But even people that are in office jobs that are stressed out, I mean, I've heard that a lot.
Well, and with night shift workers, I see this a lot because I tend to work with a lot of A lot of night shift nurses for some reason gravitate towards me. And I don't know if it's because I was a night shift nurse for a lot of years before I went to my graduate education. So I've worked with a lot of night shift people, and it's interesting to see their cortisol results. It's flatlined. It's like because the cortisol is supposed to be spiked in the morning and then it slowly tapers through the day. But on a night shift worker, we'll see it's looks low in the morning and it looks high in the evening. The number is almost exactly the same because the body has no idea what is day, what is night. It's like we're just the same. And so it has a really hard time regulating.
So does cortisol level play into a lot of what we call circadian rhythm?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. It plays a lot, that and melatonin. It goes a lot into our circadian rhythm. And then
so if it's not tapering off into the evening properly, then you're not going to fall asleep very easily.
Because your blood sugar is staying high. It raises blood sugar.
Yep, it raises blood sugar. It just keeps the brain stimulating. It doesn't trigger melatonin to increase. Yeah.
So I would imagine that those people tend to have a really tough time losing weight.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Really maintaining it.
Yes.
Other than switching their schedule around, because if that's their work schedule, that's their work schedule. What are some of the things that they could do to start moving in the right direction on those cortisol levels and help themselves?
Not flopping their schedule is one of the things that I recommend most, not doing the flip-flop.
I've done that.
2 days here, 3 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off, that kind of thing.
So
every 2 weeks flipping nights to days. I've done that. I did that for a year when I was like 20. I did 2 weeks of days, 2 weeks of nights, 2 weeks of days, 2 weeks of nights. So impossible to have any sense. You start to almost feel a little bit crazy.
Yep. So I did almost 10 years of night shifts, and it was straight night shifts, but I was a mom and a student in that time. So I would be flipping my schedule. So it was rough. It was rough mentally, physically. My hormones were jacked after that.
I bet.
How long did it take you to get back to?
Well, because I didn't have the training that I have now. So it took me a lot longer than I feel like it would take me now to heal things. But I would say it took me a good 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if somebody were working with you, how long would you expect it to take for their hormones to balance, knowing what you know now?
I feel like we can make 80% improvement in about 6 months.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially if it means that they would burn more fat and store less of it and not have to count calories. I hate counting calories.
I do too.
I tell people all the time, all calories are not created equal.
Right, exactly.
Try eating 1,000 calories of carrots and see how you feel.
Right. If it were calorie counting,
calories of carrots.
Yeah, if it were calorie counting, if that were the only thing that mattered, because of the way I like 5-year-old brain Megan would want to eat, I would simply eat 2 sugar cookies a day and call it good. Nope, that's not the way that it works.
No. We all would. You know, I used to have a client in the gym, and he told me he had diabetes, had type 2. No, type 2, type 1. I don't know. Doesn't matter. This is 20 years ago, so I'm trying to remember what type of diabetes he had. But he said that his nutritionist told him that he could have 3 Snickers bars a day if he wanted, but that's all he could eat if that's what he did. And I just looked at him like, I think your nutritionist is crazy.
Well, you see my eyes there.
I just looked at him and I went, oh my God, I don't even know where to start with that one.
Right.
I didn't know where to start. I would throw out her number and
I know I've done posts on social media where I'm talking about the importance of vegetables, protein, and all of the balance in it. And then I will get comments that it says calorie deficit is the only thing that matters. And I'm like,
no,
I know.
Bite my tongue.
Oh no. The whole fitness community is It's calories in, calories out. They call it CICO. That's all that matters. You just have to be in a caloric deficit and you're going to be hungry. And that's the way it is. And I'm going,
that puts your body into feast or famine mode. And then you're going to conserve, and then you're not going to, it's like our DNA, our ancestral DNA just, that pops back in, and then you're not going to be able to metabolize. You're killing your metabolism.
Yeah.
You're killing your digestion too, and your ability to process food.
Yeah.
Like if you just ate 3 Snickers bars a day and nothing else, what's your stomach going to look like in about, or your stomach, your GI, what's that going to look like in 6 months?
Exactly.
3 months, if you even get that far.
Exactly.
All the bad bacteria just came in, took over, and
all the sugar bacteria would just be
it's going to be eaten away, over. Feasting.
Yeah.
And everything else would be like non-functioning.
Oh man, bless their hearts.
Bless their hearts, right? I was like, I don't really know what point that dietitian was trying to make with him, but I thought, you're telling a diabetic to go ahead and eat Snickers bars if he wants to.
But eat nothing else if you do. Like,
right.
That's the part that makes less sense. It's like, but don't eat anything else. If you're going to eat those 3 Snickers bars, eat nothing else. Like.
And when I worked in family practice, I would see it where a lot of diabetics would, I'll just dose myself up on more insulin so I can eat my Snickers bars and stuff like that. Oh no. Oh no.
More insulin is making it more worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I do see people on Twitter talking about how they heard that the more fiber they have with their meal, the more that's going to help, regulate their blood sugar and so on. And some guy posted a picture of his CGM readout, right? The
continuous glucose monitor.
The glucose monitor. Thank you. Because I was like, CGM. Okay. CGM is Alli. Come on. And he posted, he had 1 carrot and it popped up to like 156. And I'm going, there's a lot more. Don't blame the carrot for what all the other crap you did. Like, it's not the carrot's fault. What are you talking about? And the fiber.
Carrots have so much other nutritional value to them.
Well, and if carrots popped up your glucose levels, then what is going on in your body? Because that doesn't make sense.
I can have carrots and it does 0 to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing. Because I wore one for like a week. I was supposed to wear it for 2 weeks, but the peel kept coming off because I was just curious. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that raised my blood sugar above 90 was either like a meal that had balsamic vinegar and some dried cranberries, because the dried cranberries had sugar on it, or a good cardio workout. Nothing else did.
Nothing else would budget.
Didn't move the needle. It was like mid 80s all the time. Mid 80s, or I dropped down into the 70s when I had a drink.
Wow.
Yeah, or cold water when I was going surfing in the ocean. It was I wonder if that's why people talk about, oh, you got to take a cold shower. I'm like, are you just trying to drop your blood sugar? I don't know.
I think that's more of the wake your ass up in the morning.
Something.
It's like a shock to the nervous system.
I see people on Twitter taking ice baths, and I'm like,
oh yes, I've been seeing that a lot lately too.
Okay.
I don't know that I'm ready to jump on that trend. Actually, I'm pretty sure I'm not.
I'm positive I'm not going to do that. The only time I like being that kind of cold is when I'm skiing and there's some involved. Sitting there and getting frozen? No.
I know.
Oh. I wear a exercise top in the middle of summer and my fingertips are getting numb. Do you know what I mean? Like, no thanks. No thanks.
That can be a sign of a hormonal imbalance.
Oh, really? Talk to me about that.
So progesterone is a vasodilator. It helps dilate the blood vessels. And so when a lot of women who struggle staying warm, it's commonly known to be a low thyroid issue, but actually it can be a low progesterone issue too. So when you're not able to keep your hands and feet warm or dry skin, that can be a thyroid issue, but then it can also be a low progesterone and or high estrogen issue too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because even It happens when I'm wearing something wet against my skin for a while. So I should be able to stay warm, is what you're saying, under those conditions. Oh, well, we got to talk. Because what's funny is when I feed my son, you can see the high chair, like the high chair behind me. I get so hot. I start sweating and I'm like, I don't know why I'm so hot. I'm just feeding him breakfast. It's only breakfast. It's not dinner, not any other time do I start getting so warm. Now, granted, I'm wearing
just in the morning.
Just in the morning.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of went, I don't know, maybe he's stressing me out. And he's 3.5 and we're still spoon feeding because he's got some developmental delay. But that's really why his story is why I headed down this road of how does nutrition affect our brain? Because at 5 months old, he wasn't eating any other food other than milk or formula. And yet he was regressing from where he was at 2.5 months old. So I started going, well, this is great because it eliminated a whole lot of variables for me. Right? I know there's a whole lot of stuff that with an adult, I would have to then start worrying about, like, well, what if it's mentality? How are you thinking? Like the whole psychology of it. He didn't have any of that. So what could possibly be going on? And that's when I started diving into the micronutrients of
they play such a huge role in kids' development and so many things. And I've seen it, and allergies and asthma and all of that. Nutrition plays such a huge role.
So he has also had GERD since he was weeks old, and they put him on Zantac. And then when Zantac got taken off the market, then they switched to Pepcid. And it wasn't until Phil said, I've got this upper GI thing for people with, I was like, talk to me about that. Like, how do I get my son off of this? And last Wednesday, I had Phil on the podcast, right? That's when I got my days and times and wires crossed with you on our live and went, no, wait, what? Hold on. I think I lost my mind in the middle of the holidays here somewhere.
Conflict.
All good.
I hope I didn't like mess up your day or anything. And but he was talking about that on the podcast. And so I immediately put him on, my son, on that upper GI relief that evening. And we didn't go back to Pepcid.
Oh, that's awesome.
Until we ran out on Thursday morning. And then I was like, okay, well, I got to do something because I was texting Phil. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have any. And now I can't get any for like a week. He's like, I'm overnighting you 4 bottles. Angel, thank you. So hopefully today.
Yes.
Maybe tomorrow at the outside. But so I had to do it for that period of time. But I know I'm not worried about it because now I know we can flop back onto that and we'll get him off of Pepcid and we'll get all of that healed because he's not going to get all the nutrition from the good whole foods that I'm giving him.
Right. Yep. Because when you're blocking those acids, it makes it so that they can't absorb those nutrients as well.
Yeah. And all he eats is whole foods, nothing processed.
Amazing.
No gluten, no dairy, all good whole foods. And that's what's been an uphill struggle for me. And so to have that's a game changer for his whole future development right there.
Yeah. And I think it's a learning process as parents too, to shift the culture of the way we feed our kids, instead of feeding from a box and feeding from, the crap foods and all of that. It's such a shift.
Even the good packaged foods, that you can buy, the good packaged foods, they're still strained. They're still lacking most of the fiber, right? When people tell me I'm going on a juicing detox diet, I'm like, just
eat some real food.
Blend up the whole food. Blend up the whole food. They're like, why? I'm like, because you're missing the fiber. You need all of that fiber. And then all they can say is like, well, I just don't want to be pooping all the time. I'm going,
well,
that's when you know you have a GI issue.
You want to keep it is what you're telling me. You don't
want good. Every human poops.
Right? And so this is the kind of stuff that, I have this recipe in the app, and it's a fresh spinach, carrot, it's frozen mango, frozen pineapple, and water. all really good nutrients. I drink one of these a day, and I figure it's probably the equivalent of like 7-ish servings. So when you were talking about your staples, I love that you got into that on the live, and I wanted to show you something, because this is the home page of our app, and I've never actually shown it on the podcast before, but you can see the things that we're focused on.
Oh yeah,
it's in front of people's faces.
Yep.
Strength training,
protein,
fruits
and veggies.
Yeah. So the goal is 10 servings of fruits and veggies a day.
Oh yes.
Yes. Say, oh no, I had vegetables with my meal, and it was like a handful of vegetables and
one serving
mashed potatoes.
Right.
Right. And fried chicken. And you're like, okay, no, that little handful of greens that you just
Wait, is chicken not a vegetable?
Wait, the chicken ate vegetables, so does that?
Right, doesn't that count? There's vegetables in the chicken, right?
And that's one struggle with my clients, I feel like, is they have the hardest time implementing vegetables into their nutrition.
Why is that? This is why I made the shake, because it takes a long time to chew up.
I think it's fresh, like they go bad, they're not easily sustainable. And so that's where it's like good, better, best mentality for me. If you can't have fresh, frozen is fine. Is it the best? No, but it's fine. It's way better than not having any.
It might be fresh stuff,
Yeah.
Frozen is pretty good if you're making stuff like soups and stews.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to throw them in and warm them up. That's the only problem with frozen is you got to do something with them.
Yeah.
Raw veg or like fresh veggies, cauliflower, broccoli, carrots, stuff like that. You can just eat them raw.
Yeah. Well,
frozen,
and
you got to at least put them into something. But
too. Just the preparation of them, not knowing how to make them taste good and that. And so I shared in one of my groups today, roasting and
taste good without.
Roasting is a good way to do.
And a bunch of salt. Right? And we add all this stuff to it. So that's why I just started blending it up with some fruits and add a little stevia in there to like really enhance the fruit. And one of those a day is like so much fiber, so much. I'm never going to eat that much spinach in a day.
Right.
Not if you had to actually chew it.
Right. And when you cook your vegetables, it denatures some of the nutrients in it. So you're better off having them raw anyway. But who's going to sit there and eat a bag of raw carrots every day?
Right.
Nobody. And even that, a bag of raw carrots is all of 3 servings of veggies or something. It'd be a lot.
Even I won't do that because I have.
And I think diversity in it. Having that option. Having
some peppers.
Yeah, having soup, having roasted vegetables. I call them my dump dinners is what I do a lot, where I have all my wilty vegetables that are on their last leg from the fridge, and I
into the soup pot.
Yeah, either a soup, stir fry, or they go on a pan and get roasted in the oven, and I put a protein somewhere in the mix.
Saute them. Yep. Oh, that's looking bad, or it's going there. Let's have spinach.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was I love that you said that these are the things that you have to do. They're like non-negotiables every day. Enough water, enough protein, and veggies, and move your body, like weight training. It wasn't just go for a walk, because the whole idea that, just get in 10,000 steps a day. And I was like, I know that that's a very good start, but the problem with telling someone, giving them a goal of a certain number to hit, is psychologically we think, once I've hit that number, I've done enough. I'm good there. I can check that box.
Well, what I encountered was, I told you I've worked with a lot of healthcare professionals. Healthcare professionals walk a lot of steps on their shifts. They'll work a 12-hour shift and they'll get, I don't know how many thousands of steps in a day, in the hospital halls. That's their baseline.
Yeah, they're getting at least 10,000, if not closer to 20.
Well, and that's the other thing. Your body is very efficient at walking. It's been doing it for a very long time.
Yeah, especially if you do it all the time. It's
a bunch of calories walking.
Yeah. You've got to be mixing things up. You've got to be strength training. You've got to be shifting your programming and all of that very, very consistently.
the same workout every time.
Nope.
Same type of training every time. Adding in bands and changing things up. It's got to constantly do that. But that's a lot of that's where I come in, right? Because people go onto YouTube and they watch somebody doing some crazy exercise with either body weight or bands or something, and they think, okay, I'll just go do that. And it's like, you're not ready for that yet.
Mm-hmm.
No, then they get hurt.
Yeah.
Areas, right? And yes, and they get hurt. And then having to think your way through, like, okay, well, what's my workout going to be today then?
Right. And then they get into analysis paralysis.
Right.
And then they don't do it.
Or they just go back to doing the same old thing because
Exactly.
I don't have time to think about this right now.
Exactly.
So what we did in the app is Chris wrote an algorithm that takes your initial strength test and builds a progressive workout regimen so that every single workout is different. You're almost never going to get 2 workouts the same because there's so many exercises for so many body parts that you can do on any given day that it's always going to be a little bit different. And it uses all the exercises that I put into the database were all safe, effective. You're not going to hurt yourself. It uses a lot of balance and proprioception and kinesthetic awareness. And so a lot of single leg, single arm things,
which is so good for your mind, so good for your body.
Even simple things, like things that people don't usually consider a single leg workout, like shoulder press.
Mm-hmm.
Do them on one leg.
Yeah, so I have them doing standing on one foot, bicep curls standing on one foot, just things to help challenge the neurological system as well as the musculoskeletal system that they would never even think of, or they would just kind of like avoid doing because, well, I know that could be good, but why? It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal.
Right.
Or then
it adds up.
You're adding in bands and it's like, whoa, or just push-ups on a ball. Like, strengthening the connection.
And the core stability there.
Yes. Yeah. Everything is core is really for core stability in my programs, because even the exercises where you could use a stabilization pad, like a seated row, and you could use that to lift more weight. I'm like, stay away from the pad. You have to use your core to lift the weight, and it changes things.
Love that. Yeah. And exercise is one of the most important things when it comes to balancing your hormones. You've got to do it. It helps you metabolize estrogen. It helps you stabilize your adrenal glands. It is one of the foundational aspects of hormone balance.
Talk about that a little bit more, like a little bit more of the mechanics of that.
So it's part of the detoxification process, the sweating involved in exercise. Sweating is good, and that's going to help you detox any extra hormones or the ones that are not so good for you. It's part of that process, and exercise is 100% necessary when it comes to balancing the hormones.
So those of us that sweat very easily, that's a very good thing.
It is a good thing. Okay.
So then if somebody doesn't tend to sweat very much, because if you low level weight train, what I love about weight training alone is it's not systemically taxing. Even if you went really, really hard, other than plyometrics on leg day, even if you went really hard and heavy, you're still never really raising your heart rate much above, the 150s, right? Or even 140s. So you're not systemically taxing and exhausting your body the way you would if you did an intense cardio session the same way. So when you talk about sweating being good for detoxification, there seems to be a tipping point at which you could go too far, right? You get too much sweat going because you're pushing your cardio too far, and then that could have an adverse.
Well, that's going to drive the cortisol levels up too high, and then that cortisol is going to steal away from like your estrogen and progesterone production. So yes, you don't want to do too much. It's definitely a delicate balance. But then strength training, we need the strength training because that's going to help you build your testosterone levels and keep those stable. So it's a balance. It's a balance, but strength training and exercising is 100% a foundation.
Yeah. Plus strengthening the density of your bones. So
Oh, yes.
For us women, as we get older and osteoporosis starts creeping up because of those hormone balances, I mean, that's part of the reason why I add in all of that balancing stuff. Not so much that we're doing crazy stuff and that you might get hurt, because what we want to avoid is injury. And that's the whole point to it. But enough so that, doing a one-legged squat, building the whole posterior kinetic chain, but doing it with balance so that you're less of a fall risk.
Exactly.
Is only a huge benefit, right? But
Yes.
the thing about the app is that it constantly changes the weight. So as you get stronger, it goes up and it adjusts the reps. So there's sometimes when it tells me to lift more and I'm like, I don't know if I can do it.
Push yourself.
Right. And there's times where I'm like, nope, not today. Nope, not feeling that strong today. But other days I am. And so it takes into account, it gets smarter the more you use it.
That's awesome. And that could be cycle timing too. There's certain times in your cycle when you've got more strength. And then there's certain times in your cycle, depending on where your hormone levels are. Like during ovulation, we tend to be stronger. When we're menstruating, lower energy. There's other times when we're higher energy. So there's a lot of that goes into it too.
So talk about really fast. So women's issues like PCOS and stuff like that. What should somebody do if they have something like that going on?
In regards to like exercise,
diet, gut health, how do they get their hormones back balanced again? I mean, it's a big thing for a lot of women.
Yeah. So PCOS, there are actually so many different causes of PCOS. It's a commonly known, insulin resistance is a commonly known thing. But then there's also stress that can be a cause. Post-birth control, being on birth control can actually trigger PCOS to come in. And I actually don't even like the diagnosis PCOS. What it really actually is elevated androgens, which are those testosterone, DHEA. Those are too high. Okay. And so some things. Just got home. I'm like, be quiet. Anyways.
That's okay, because sometimes I hear my son playing with his toy.
So. Oh, good. I'm waiting for one more to come in and I'm going to have to hush her up too. Anyways, with PCOS, with those elevated androgens, we have to figure out what the identifying cause is, obviously. So then we know where to interrupt things as far as lifestyle modification goes. When it comes to exercise, I usually like to do lower weights, higher reps. Okay. With that, more band work with those women. Sometimes like bar type exercises can be fun for them. A lot of those women really like strength training because they have those higher androgens, so they tend to gravitate to that because they are stronger. But sometimes we have to rein that back a little bit because that will increase their testosterone. So sometimes we have to take it more to the yoga and the band work. We still need strength training 100%, but we have to kind of rein that back a little bit. And then the nutrition just depends on what the root cause of that PCOS is.
Okay. So it sounds like gut health is going to be a big component of that.
So what was that?
I said, it sounds like gut health is going to be a big component.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because if we've got a problem with the hormones, then, and the gut's probably got a significant player in there. Right.
Yeah. So, and with that, it's pretty much with all of we figure out if they've got some either food sensitivities in there going on, if they've got some motility issues, if they're not moving things through very good, if they've got constipation, if they've got diarrhea. And so we've got to figure out if those are what's going on there and work through that before we can figure out nutritionally where to go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What you would do is have them do a saliva test, right?
So that's how I like to check the hormones, is through a saliva test. Food sensitivity test, we either do a blood sample, or sometimes I do a hair sample.
Oh, hair sample, that's different.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you find food sensitivity through the blood? Because usually the doctors prescribe a scratch test.
Yeah, so that one is usually allergy types, and that's going to be some more of an immediate response. It all depends on like what the immediate reaction versus more of a delayed reaction. So I'm usually looking more for a delayed reaction, and that's going to be more in the blood or a hair sampling.
Right, because then you're going to be able to identify systemic inflammation.
Yes. Because a lot of people know, and it's usually they're identifying allergies more in childhood, when it comes to foods, peanuts, eggs, those things are very, very common, but food sensitivities are a little bit harder to pinpoint because they are so delayed.
Yeah. No kidding. I used to be able to eat all the bread I wanted to, and then like it just, I don't know. As soon as I went gluten-free, all of a sudden I dropped 15 pounds and went,
well, gluten is so much more potent nowadays than it was 30 years ago, and it just wreaks way more havoc nowadays.
It really does. That's why people were like, wait a minute, why am I suddenly gluten sensitive? It's like, well, it was probably creeping up over time, but it's just, there's more of it now than there used to be. And then there's the camp of people that say, oh, no, that's just the glyphosate. That's not gluten. It's the glyphosate. I'm like, what's the difference if you can't separate the two?
Yeah. Yep.
So what do we do? I guess stay away from it, or fix your gut to
right.
The enzymes to break it down.
Yeah, because you need that gut moving and working efficiently so that you can poop and metabolize and actually go through life and have good digestion.
And get the nutrients
absorb and excrete. It's what we're supposed to be doing.
Going back to the whole carnivore and keto camp, I start to wonder if over time, because people had been doing that, you could be low carb and low fat and still be in ketosis, right? But the idea of the keto diet is to have your diet be the majority of it be fat. And usually land animal fat at that. It's not even the oils that our body needs. And I'm just scratching my head thinking, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, maybe it'll be okay, but I don't think in any of our history that we have written down, in terms of the body, that anybody's done this, for decades on end. And we don't really know what the result's going to be. So I don't recommend anything that I don't know what the result is going to be. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And I mean, if you just look at the evolution of nutrition over the last 50 years, it's been actually quite comical, and and like, even my father-in-law had a massive heart attack a couple of years ago, and he was in the hospital, and I mean, I remember when I worked in the hospital, and now thinking back, a cardiac diet. And then when he went to order his cardiac diet, I was just flabbergasted by what he was able to order that was a cardiac approved diet, and so it's just funny. And yes, like what you were saying, any of these diets and the trendiness of them, until things have been proven, and why don't we just focus on what is there, what is studied, and what we know? And we know we need phytonutrients, we know we need fiber, we know we need protein, we know we need good healthy fats, and why don't we avoid super polarizing trends?
Right. Stick to what we know. And yes. I don't understand how eating vegetables and fruit is so difficult.
Right. There's a book that I read and I really, really like it. And it was crazy. It's called Deep Nutrition. Have you ever heard of that book?
Yeah.
It's called Deep Nutrition. Who is it by? Shanahan, I think is their last name. Anyways, it is deep. And it just kind of talks about how our nutrition, like my nutrition, affects like my egg quality, which affects my children's egg quality, and it's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
So like what my grandmother ate affected how my mom developed, affected how I developed and everything. And she goes a lot into the oils and brain health and our bone structures and all of that, and phytonutrients and fiber and
DHA and the EPA,
mm-hmm.
olive oils, coconut oils, the MCTs. That's why oil is one of the daily tasks. I'm like, I think I calculated it as something like 25%.
See, and this is another funny thing, like with what I do with hormones, cholesterol is a foundational building block of hormones. And so I'll get these patients who have a cardiologist in their back pocket, and their cardiologist will want to suppress their cholesterol to basically nothing. And I'm like, well, if you have no cholesterol, you're not going to be able to produce hormones.
Right.
So yeah, we need cholesterol. We need healthy fats to even produce. And if you're craving fats, that's a sign that your hormones are off too.
Yeah.
So if you're craving like McDonald's, if you're craving a Big Mac, if you're craving French fries, that's usually a sign that hormonals, like your hormones are needing some TLC and you're needing some good healthy fats.
So I'm craving vegetables like all the time.
Well, you've retrained yourself. You've trained yourself well.
I literally was like, I could have ice cream, but I open up the freezer and I'm like, that doesn't even look good. Ooh, those bell peppers look really delicious.
Or a whole bag of green beans.
Vegetables for dessert. Like, what is happening here? Right, but I can't say that was that way 2 months ago.
What has shifted for you?
I doubled the dose of the probiotic.
Oh.
I went on a high dose of it, and
so it could be that those vegetables are giving those probiotics some good prebiotic food.
Must be because I was telling Phil that I made these peanut butter cookies with dark chocolate peanut butter cups inside, like thumbnail cookies, but with those for Christmas Eve for my family and guests. And I looked at them and I was like, I mean, I didn't even want one. I tried it because I made it. I'd never eaten one, but I took one bite and I was like, I could really not finish this cookie, and I wouldn't care. Like, it's peanut butter and chocolate.
I did not have this problem.
No, I think he ate half of them.
That's funny.
My son
I made up for Alli's lack of consuming them.
My son took the first two and he was like, oh my God, Mom, these are the best things ever.
Yeah, he had no problem with them either.
No, my daughter didn't either. But I found it's just such a shift from Thanksgiving to Christmas that I noticed it.
That's crazy.
Apple pie.
Yeah, but sometimes our cravings are our body telling us something that it actually needs,
Right. But then if they're sugar cravings, then it's not what we actually need. So
sugar cravings could be that our brain needs glucose.
Okay.
And glucose doesn't need to come from terrible forms of glucose. Glucose can come from carrots. Glucose can come from berries.
I usually don't think of
from potatoes too, right?
From potato, yeah, glucose. So sometimes those sugar cravings are our brain starving for energy in glucose.
I've actually noticed that. Like sometimes I'll just have a small amount of potatoes, maybe 4 ounces, and that's actually enough. Like I'll be thinking, oh, I want some sugar, I want some everything starts looking good, cupcakes and chocolate
Right.
bars, but then just have a small amount of potatoes, a little bit of butter, salt, just whatever, and then it goes away. Then I'm like, oh, now I'm fine.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like my brain has associated this little craving with Snickers bars, but if I just ate the potatoes, then it would be like, oh, I can do this instead.
Yep. Yep.
And that's why I don't take French fries off the to-do list.
That was one of the ones that surprised me the most when I got on her diet plan. I'm like, there's a lot of French fries in here. What's going on? Why can't I get a French fries 3 times a week? Really?
Yeah, because I'd rather better than a Snickers bar, because that's why I started doing with my daughter when I was like, okay, girl, we got to get off the sugar craving thing that you're on, sugar addict. And so I was like, just eat French fries instead of sugar. She was like, really? Yeah, have French fries instead. You still get the energy that your body wants, but without it being in the form of refined sugar. So now we're causing a different effect in the gut too. And mentally, we're not associating this like I need energy with it needs to be in the form of sugar anymore.
Right. Or caffeine or something.
Well, especially when your French fries can be in the form of chili cheese fries.
Yeah.
I have that in the app on the Mac.
That was one of my first ones that I had off of there. I'm like, not just French fries, but I can put cheese on here, some beans, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. You can make traditional food, like traditional comfort foods, healthy.
Very healthy.
Right. Well, it's and especially looking at it as that stepping stone to get away from being so used to processed foods,
right,
and all these other pizzas and burger buns and all this.
Well, for some people who I'm baby stepping, who go through the drive-through every single day,
right,
one thing I tell them is, okay, and they're like, I can't not go through the drive-through, and don't tell me to order a salad. I say, okay, how about this? What about if you order a kid's meal and a salad? And they're like, oh, I could do that.
Cool.
So that they still get a couple of bites of the littler burger that's probably like a third of the calories than
and so that's like our
Big Mac.
Tiny little baby step into a change. And I'm like, yes, okay, we're running with that.
That's why those recipes are in there.
Yeah.
If that's what you're craving, what you're looking forward to, it's in there. We're just going to make it healthier because it's not like the Hormel chili. It's like the turkey.
Yeah, it's good chili.
It's good. Yeah. Chili. And it's not all fries with a little bit of chili. It's fries with a lot of chili. You know, it's
very filling.
It's the ratio of protein to carbs too.
Yep.
So much. So, I bet that matters a lot to hormones as well.
Oh yeah. So much. And the spike in insulin versus, it plays a huge role, and that'll spike your cortisol and lots of stuff.
So you mentioned birth control there for a minute.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that.
So birth control, while I 100% am all about women having the power to choose when they conceive, having the power to choose, I wish women had more informed power to choose. And I wish they were more informed at the detrimental effects that oral birth control can have on them.
Talk about that a little bit more.
So oral birth control, and because yes, it has estrogen and progesterone in it, but they're synthetic. They are not the natural estrogen and progesterone that we make, and they get metabolized in the liver and they wreak havoc in our liver, and they deplete us of nutrients that we need to have to be able to thrive. They can trigger things like PCOS. They suppress our natural hormone production. And then, like I was saying, there are so many functions of our natural hormones in the body. And so when you're suppressing the natural hormones, while the birth control is working to suppress conception in the uterus, you're not getting all the glorious benefits of natural hormones the rest of your body, because you're suppressing that feedback loop in the brain to get the natural hormones. So a lot of women will notice mental changes. They will notice insomnia. They'll notice hair falling out. They'll notice weight gain. And so I just really don't feel like, because a lot of times birth control is given at a young age. A lot of times birth control is given as symptom suppression and not for actual birth control. It's given for acne, it's given for bad periods, stuff like that. So it's not given for actual birth control. Mm-hmm. So I just don't feel like women are adequately informed of what birth control can actually do to a woman's body.
Yeah. They definitely need to take all of that into consideration. Because especially if they're using it for balancing hormones.
Yeah, if they're using it for symptom suppression, I have a lot to say with that. If they're using it for birth control and that's the route they want to go, I support them. But if they're using it for symptom suppression, I would say, listen, there are better ways we can do this. Like, let's not do it for symptom suppression. Let's get down to what's actually causing those symptoms.
Yeah. And so then we talked a little bit on the live about how to maintain that balance. Mm-hmm. And I think you touched on it a little, but can you expand on that some more?
So maintaining or achieving?
Well, let's talk about achieving and then maintaining.
So achieving the balance definitely takes getting down to what's actually causing the issues. And every woman is a little bit different. Sometimes it's their gut health, illnesses, trauma can be a huge spiraling things. Sometimes it can be the birth control that sets it off. So we get down to what's actually causing it. Then we formulate a plan, stress reduction, strategically supplementing to support their gut health, their micronutrients, macronutrients, strategically supplementing that way. A lot of women try to blindly supplement when it comes. You see a lot of hormone balancing blanket supplements out there, and I feel like you can waste a lot of money in that realm. But if we can strategically supplement and get down to what's actually causing it and figure out what the imbalance is and then supplement from there, you can streamline your balancing so much quicker. And then as far as like maintaining it, those are the foundational things, making sure you're managing your stress. You're moving your body strategically, strength training. You are drinking water. You're nourishing your body with good, nourishing foods, protein, vegetables, all of that. And you're prioritizing your sleep. Those are like the foundational things.
The sleep deprivation of young children.
Yep. So you see a lot of hormonal imbalances in women who are in the throes of young children,
post-menopause, like postnatal, and then they're not sleeping. So that's enough stress right there.
Yep.
And just because we can muscle through because we're strong women doesn't mean that, just because we can get it all done doesn't mean that we're doing ourselves any favors by being able to do it.
And those hormones can spiral, and then it can lead you to going in and being like, I just need something for my stress, put you on an antidepressant, which can then cause issues of its own. And then, I've got heartburn, there's an acid blocker. And then, and then the meds just keep kind of piling up and you don't really get down to the bottom of things.
Yeah. I tried those acid blockers. My dad was taking them for decades and they caused atrial fibrillation, right? Because it's potassium depleting. And so he had an atrial ablation once, I think right around the time that my first son was born. So this is like almost 10 years before he died. So he went in, he passed away last July, not this last July, but the one before that, July 2020. And he went in for an atrial ablation that he'd been waiting on because of COVID. And literally because of all of he also had heart disease and then diabetes and then gout and then, right? All these inflammation, chronic conditions, all of these things that could have been fixed by
lifestyle diseases.
right? And ironically, it was the medications that killed him. Not that he overdosed, but when he went to go take his medication in the hospital, he aspirated some water and then they put him on a ventilator and he never got off.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's awful. It's awful. I really, really tried to get him to to at least look at the white papers on the probiotics. Just like, can we have a conversation about like, how do we maybe turn this ship around a bit? But,
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard because it's a new conversation. It's new conversations to be had. And when it comes to like changing the conversation, usually when it comes to medicine, what's happening in the educational system with medicine is usually 20 years behind the research.
Exactly why I'm frustrated with the medical profession. And they wait 20 years. And then the problem is that's half of some people's lifetime. Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted to get my son off of the acid blocker as soon as possible. And his doctor just wasn't, I was the one who was leading the charge on that. I was the one who was like, how do we titrate him off of this? And then when I started trying to, he would have symptoms. I only got down to he was on the lowest dose he could be on. And I got halfway through that, but then he'd have symptoms again. Mm-hmm. And so this upper GI relief is the only thing that has solved the problem.
Oh, that's so good. So good.
I'm so thrilled because I know what it's going to mean to him long term.
Yes.
Even with all the good food that I was giving him, what it was going to mean to him long term, just to be on that one medication.
Yeah, well, and it depletes B vitamins and all of that.
Yeah, it's bad. Really, really bad stuff, and it leads to long term other bigger issues too. So I'm
looking forward to it a lot for the same reasons, to see how much of a difference it makes to start changing some of those baselines in myself, because that acid reflux is something that I've had a lot. I'm sure it's had all kinds of cascading impacts, like probably acid reflux, like at least 10 years.
Oh,
but at least
I've had that pretty strong off and on.
Yeah. And then that affects your relationship with foods too,
Oh, very much. Very much so.
It's back to the quality piece.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was like 2 years ago, my relationship with food had gotten so bad, I was up to almost 380 pounds.
Oh.
Over the last 2 years, dropped to 140.
Wow.
Down to almost 240 now. And can tell, especially as things change, is when I start to see more and more just how drastic all that, everything was normalized for me. So all the mindset changes, everything, all those cravings, things were just well, this is just how it is. That's just normal. It's almost like it got to a point where it's well, there is no difference. There is no getting better. This is just normal. And this is just how it is. But then as things start to change, that's when the light bulb goes off and you say, oh shit. This had become so constant, so much the same way, that you don't realize just how much you were looking at. When we see these people online saying, oh, they don't want to eat vegetables anymore. I get that. I used to look at vegetables and think, why would I want to bother with those? What is this? This is a waste of chewing time or something. It was just
I was the world's pickiest eater growing up.
Right.
I was the world's pickiest eater. And that's why I tell people, if I can change my mindset around vegetables, I promise you can too, because I was the one that would sit at the dinner table, stubborn as can be, and would fight my mother and say, I am not eating rabbit food.
I have a kid like that.
Yeah. And for what Alli was saying earlier, how she's at the point where she's craving vegetables. I'm not quite that far yet, but I can see that.
I get to that point. I get to that point when when we've been out of town and I'm not in my regular, jive eating the way I usually eat.
Off the track.
Yeah, I'm like, oh man, I need to get back to where I'm having oodles of veggies and, so I get into feeling, I guess I sometimes crave vegetables.
I'm finding it's to the point now where it's a little less willpower to get myself to eat vegetables.
Yes, but it takes training. It takes
It
training.
does. It takes some training, some habit. And like I was saying with the sugar, it's like you were saying how sometimes your brain wants glucose.
Yeah.
And then you make that association to, oh, that means sugar. That means, snack bars and stuff. Or you could go somewhere else. You're just not used to it yet. And so sometimes there are some cravings and you're like, well, I want food. I don't know what food I want. Well, what do I usually turn to? And then you go for that and that doesn't satisfy you. And then you're like, well, I'm going to eat more food because my body's just saying eat food. And you're just not sure what to eat because you haven't trained really.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm finding as more and more hitting that 10 plus servings of veggies a day and realizing, well, sometimes I feel hungry and the veggies don't cut it. Sometimes I feel hungry and they do, and they really do. Had a big platter of just like, carrots, peppers, and everything last night. And it was like, that really hit the spot. It was good. But it doesn't always work like that. Well, sometimes during the day, but what's that?
Dip helped.
Yeah.
I love that you guys encourage 10 servings because there's a book by Dr. Terry Wall. What is it called? It's like, it's her autoimmune protocol. It's how she helped peel herself out of MS. She had debilitating MS where she was in a it's the Walls protocol is what she calls it. That's the book. And it's where she got herself out of a wheelchair essentially. And her thing is, she says 13 servings of vegetables a day. That's one of her big things. And she's got like groups of 3. We've got to have 3 colorful, 3 leafy greens, 3, but I'm like, so I love that you guys have, even when I tell people just at least double your servings, they're like, oh, double my serving.
One serving. And now,
they're like, how do I double it? And so you guys say 10. I'm like, yeah, I love that.
I usually make that.
Well, that shake is so good. I mean, like Alli was saying, with that shake,
cram as much as we can into one.
That's the 7 servings. It tastes great. It doesn't, because I've had those shakes before. And I get why some people don't like them. They can, if you don't put the right stuff in them, if there's just like spinach and carrots and celery and broccoli, it's going to come out tasting like rabbit food. Like that's why people say that.
Nobody wants to eat that.
Right.
No, there's no sweetness to it. It's all bitter. It comes out very bitter.
Yeah.
And so like, this shake, you add in the mangoes, the pineapple, and the stevia, it changes the whole thing of it. It's like
stevia is an okay way to sweeten things.
It is.
Yeah.
Don't be putting Splenda in there.
No.
Stevia is good.
So this is what tracking page looks like. Right? All the water, all the fruits and veggies, and then I'll enter my shake and it'll go 7.3. And then it'll just keep counting it. Even if I fill the bar all the way, it'll just keep counting and counting.
Yeah, so you can have 13, 15, right.
Love it.
But I figure 10 is the minimum that you want to hit each day.
Yeah.
Love it.
But, and the fact that shake has 7, I mean, I look forward to it after the gym. Come home from the gym, have one of those shakes, and I'll, knock that back in 5 minutes.
I can't
because it's actually tasty.
There isn't enough time to chew on, right? So it's like, that's why you see with a straw, just getting it down, getting it done. And there's plenty of water in there too, And
I think that's if you struggle getting veggies in, like there are ways, like blending them up, and like you can do it.
The biggest problem I've had with that shake has actually been the brain freeze.
Oh.
I've had that a couple of times now. And it's like, this really, it gets painful quick.
People put ice in their shakes, and I'm like, why not just put
frozen fruit? It's good.
Yeah.
The pineapple mango is a nice combo.
Oh, yes.
Well, it has really important vitamins, and the pineapple anti-inflammatory qualities, which I think everybody needs. So there's a rationale, at least somewhat of a rationale.
Yes.
Choices.
Besides making it taste better.
Yeah.
It's really yummy.
And then I'll put in whatever veggie is on its last legs or fruit.
Right.
Oh, this banana's going to go, that goes in.
Yep.
Those strawberries are on their way out.
They can go in.
A summertime thing though, when they're more abundant, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those were all really, really important topics. I really appreciate you. And I know your girls are home, so you need to spend some time with them, and we probably can just wrap up now. But how do people find you? Obviously, if they come to me, I'm going to refer them over to you, but they can find you on Instagram. And so tell us your website, your contact info, all of that stuff. Where do they go and find you?
My website is liveblisshealth.com. And then Instagram is where I do a lot of my interacting, and that's Megan Bliss NP.
Cool.
So, yes. Yes.
That was really, really fun. Thank you so much.
So fun to chat with you both. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, you guys, we're going to wrap it up. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Bye.